Hey guys, welcome to the garden. Thanks for joining us this morning. So it is September 25th and we are just getting ready to wrap up some of this garden. It's toward the end of the growing season. So we're going to work on a few things today and we want to show you around to show you what the status is. It'll be a few weeks before everything's completely done, but you can hopefully learn a few things. If you have any questions, let us know. So come on and join me. I'd like to show you some of the crops that we still have in the garden. There are some that are just summer crops, and then there are some that will extend into the fall. Kale right here that you can see, it still looks really good, and this is something that'll last through some hard frost, and it'll still stay probably till November if we let it. So this looks great. This is a fall crop. Something like our zucchini plants over here, this is a summer plant. And I did a couple plants later on in the season just to see what would happen. And as you can see, this plant here has some leaf damage, and that's from the frost. So it's really quite too cold for this to bear fruit at this point. You can see that there's like little baby zucchini starting to grow there. They might get a little bit bigger, but they might not have much happen to them at all. So they're summer crops. You can see some of these other things like basil starting to die off. I have a second planting of beans here that is not that far along. Again, it's something later that was put in. Another crop that is a fall crop that looks great still is Swiss chard. That's something that can continue to be picked through the fall. In Columbia County, generally your frost is going to be late September, early October. So we've gotten some frost here already, but a lot of the times you're not seeing that frost until, early October. And Swiss chard, kale, those can last through some good frost. Other plants like the tomatoes over here, you're seeing that these are starting to die off. Their growing season is pretty much over. So we're going to be pulling those up today. And there's a couple different philosophies about what you can do with your plants. So some people just choose to leave all their dead plants in the garden, let that decompose over the winter, and then till it in the spring. I prefer with the tomato plants and any diseased plants to burn those and then to leave some of that other stuff and till it under. And what I'm hoping to do with this garden is to cover this in a couple loads of composted manure and then let that sit over the winter, and then in the spring that'll just be great for the soil. One other thing that I want to mention is if your garden, you're planning to use it through the winter and you're going to be using the same garden the next spring and you have the option to, there are things that you can plant in the fall that need to overwinter. For example, garlic is one of those things. You're going to have to plant that in the fall, and then that'll lie dormant during the winter, and then it'll activate in the spring and start growing. So if you have garlic cloves and you want to do that, this would be around the time when you want to make that happen. There are a few other things that are winter crops as well. You can find a lot of those in the Farmer's Almanac, or if you need tips and suggestions on that, just let us know and we'll do the best that we can to help you. But our garden here, this is not going to be planted for the winter, so we're just going to basically wrap everything up for the fall, and then if we want to start it next spring, we can do that.
Now I'd like to talk about a couple of surprises we had in the garden this year. Firstly, we had an abundance of dill that reseeded itself from last year, which was a delight, and it apparently really likes to grow next to carrots. They like each other. I don't know why, they just do. The other thing we have here, if I can get this dill out of the way, is oregano, which has already gone to seed. It's flowering now, which the bees thoroughly enjoy. Oregano, being a perennial, will come back next year. All you have to do is cut it, and it will come back. So this will all come back next year. The dill will reseed, apparently, because it did from last year. What we have here is fennel. And I planted that on a lark. I really didn't expect it to take very well. And I have to say I didn't really pay much attention to it. But we do have a couple of nice bulbs of fennel in there. That is not a perennial, and that would have to be reseeded each year. Someplace like Southern California or Texas, it grows wild, so it's a very hardy plant. So a nice herb for you to grow. This is the mallow plant. It's considered a weed, but it's where we get marshmallow from. It's a mucilaginous plant. So when I'm not exactly sure how you do it, I think it's the roots that you use, and you boil it, and they would whip it with sugar to make a goo similar to our modern day marshmallow. So that is the mallow plant. I'm sorry that it doesn't have a flower, because you see the flower, you could recognize it better. But if you look it up, mallow and marshmallow, yeah, that's the plant. And yes, it is edible, and that's what they make out of it. It's supposed to also be very good for your digestion, so in case anyone wants to know. Okay, we're going to talk about Purslane, because this was kind of new to me this season. It grew voraciously in the garden all by itself because it is considered a weed. However, I've come to understand that it is very nutritious and delicious. In Mexico, it's called verdulago, and they eat it regularly. And we put it to very good use this year in the garden. We had several crops of purslane, which were eaten by people who were hungry and thoroughly enjoyed it. So I'm very happy about that. That was like a surprise. That was a surprise thing. So the thing I wanted to mention about the purslane is I had no idea how to cook it, but you can always go online, and that's just what I did. And as I said, it was under the title of verdulago, but if you just look up how to cook purslane, there are several recipes, and check it out. We're here in front of the banana squash, and the banana squash is a variety that comes from South America in the high country of Peru. So it likes cold and dry. It doesn't really like to be too wet. So we're hoping that we're going to get more of these banana squash, because they can get up to 3 feet long. And the texture of them, they're somewhere between a summer squash and a winter squash. They're not as tough, so they make a great ingredient for soup. So we're going to leave that in the hopes that we still, why not? As long as the groundhogs don't get it, because the groundhogs are apparently very partial to banana squash. But that's that with the banana squash. What else can I tell you? This season has been actually a good gardening season if you had access to water. There was a lot of watering because it was hot and dry. But as any gardener will tell you, not enough water, if you can get water, is way better than too much water. Because if it rains too much and then you have too much water, or your crops flood out, there's really not much you can do about that. Okay, so it's the end of the season. We're just kind of finishing up with a little bit of kale, a little bit of chard, maybe a few peppers, and we're hoping to get a couple banana squash still. But all in all, this year was a very productive farming year. It was a very good year to have a garden. it was dry and hot, if you could get access to water, then you were okay. But water was key to the operation. We had plenty of sunshine. So, and in conclusion, it's well worth it to do it. It's well worth it. Everybody should do this. There's no reason, if you have a plot of land that has some sunshine and you have access to water, there's absolutely no reason why you can't grow something, even the easiest of things. And if you want to know more about it, then you can ask us. Because gardeners are always willing to share, because that's what we do. That's how we learn. We learn from each other. So I hope to see you next year. Voila. Voila, ici. Happy trails to you until we meet again. Happy trails to you. Keep smiling on, my friend. Happy trails to you.